Homeless for years, John Helinski lived under a bus stop, forgotten by the world. Then a cop uncovered a long-lost bank account that changed everything. What happened next will amaze you. But before we jump in, let us know in the comments where you are listening from. And don't forget to subscribe for more narratives. Let's get started. Tampa, Florida, was a city full of life, with its bustling streets and vibrant neighborhoods. But amid the noise and movement, John Helinski sat quietly on a worn bench at a bus stop, his gaze distant and empty. For 3 years, this bus stop had been his home. When the weather turned bad, he sought shelter beneath it, and on better days, he pieced together makeshift quarters with cardboard and discarded items he scavenged from the streets. The city seemed oblivious to him. Passers-by rarely acknowledged his presence, and even when they did, it was often with pity or discomfort. John had grown used to being invisible, a shadow among the living. Life hadn't always been this way. John had once been a hardworking man with dreams. Born in Poland, he immigrated to the United States in his youth, full of hope for a better future. He took pride in being a U.S. citizen, working tirelessly to build a modest life. But all that changed the day his wallet was stolen. It seemed like a minor inconvenience at first, but the loss of his ID spiraled into something far worse. Without identification, John couldn't prove who he was. He lost access to benefits, housing, and even the ability to apply for jobs. Slowly, everything he had worked for slipped away, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and the crushing weight of despair. One humid morning, as the city roared to life around him, John caught the attention of Charles Inman, a caseworker at the Community Housing Solutions Center. Charles was known for his persistence and heart, often taking on the most challenging cases. When he first approached John, he could see the wariness in the man's eyes. "Hi, I'm Charles," he said softly, crouching to meet John's gaze. "I work with people who need a little help. Can we talk?" John hesitated, studying the stranger's face. People rarely offered help without expecting something in return. But there was something genuine about Charles's tone, something John hadn't heard in years. Hope. Reluctantly, John agreed to share his story. Charles listened patiently, piecing together the fragments of a life that had unraveled. He learned about the stolen ID, the years of struggle, and the countless roadblocks John had faced. "John," Charles said after a long pause, "I won't lie to you. This is going to be tough, but I believe we can get you back on your feet." For the first time in years, John allowed himself to feel the faintest glimmer of hope. Charles quickly realized that helping John would be no small task. Without an ID or birth certificate, even the simplest process became a labyrinth of red tape. Determined to make progress, Charles reached out to Dan McDonald, a Tampa police officer known for his resourcefulness and compassion. When Charles explained the situation, Dan didn't hesitate. "Let's get to work," he said, rolling up his sleeves. Together, they embarked on a painstaking search for John's identity. They called government offices, sifted through old records, and faced countless dead ends. Each time they hit a roadblock, John braced himself for the disappointment. But Charles and Dan refused to give up. "It's not about where you've been," Dan told him one afternoon. "It's about where you're going." After weeks of tireless effort, their persistence paid off. They tracked down a copy of John's birth certificate in an archive. It was a small victory, but to John it felt monumental. With that piece of paper, he was no longer invisible. He was someone again. As they worked to rebuild John's life, Charles and Dan suggested checking if he had any unclaimed accounts or benefits. John vaguely remembered opening a bank account years ago, but doubted it was still active. When they arrived at the bank, the clerk retrieved John's information from an old database. As she typed, her expression shifted from routine focus to wide-eyed astonishment. "Mr. Helinski," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief, "your account is still active, and it has quite a substantial balance." John furrowed his brow, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. The clerk turned her computer screen toward them. There, on the account summary, was a number far beyond anything John had imagined. Over $80,000. Unbeknownst to him, the bank account had been quietly accumulating Social Security payments for years. Though John had struggled on the streets, unaware of the resources he was entitled to, his benefits had been deposited month after month. "I can't believe this," John whispered, his hands trembling. For years, he had lived in poverty, scavenging for meals and shelter, while a small fortune had been waiting for him all along. Charles placed a reassuring hand on John's shoulder. "This changes everything, John. Let's make sure it's put to good use." With the bank account unlocked, John's life began to transform. The first step was securing permanent housing. Charles worked quickly to find a modest but comfortable apartment for John, one that would offer him stability and dignity. The moment John stepped into his new home, he was overwhelmed with emotion. The simple things, a bed with clean sheets, a functioning kitchen, a warm shower, felt like unimaginable luxuries after years on the streets. "I never thought I'd have this again," John said, tears welling in his eyes as he sat on the edge of his bed. But the transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. For years, John had felt invisible, forgotten by the world. Now, he was reclaiming his sense of self-worth. Charles and Dan continued to support him, ensuring he had access to medical care, counseling, and other services to help him adjust to his new life. As John settled into his new routine, he began to think about others who were still struggling. He knew what it felt like to be unseen, to feel like life had passed you by. "I want to help," he told Charles one afternoon. "There are people out there who need to know they're not alone." Inspired by his journey, John started volunteering at a local shelter, sharing his story with those who felt hopeless. His presence was a beacon of hope, proof that no matter how dark life might seem, change was possible. John also found joy in the small things, gardening outside his apartment, cooking meals in his kitchen, and reading books he'd always wanted to but never had the chance to. Each day felt like a gift. One evening, as John sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset over Tampa, he reflected on his journey. He thought about the years he had spent on the streets, the kindness of strangers who refused to give up on him, and the incredible twist of fate that had turned his life around. It wasn't just about the money, it was about being seen, about mattering. For years he had been a man erased by circumstance, but now he had a name, a story, and a future. John's story became a symbol of hope in the community, inspiring others to step up and make a difference. Charles and Dan often shared his journey in their work, reminding people that everyone deserves a second chance. As the city lights began to twinkle in the distance, John smiled to himself. His life had been full of unexpected turns, but this chapter, this new beginning, was one he wouldn't trade for anything. How did John's story make you feel? Were you inspired by his resilience and the kindness of those who helped him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories like this. Let's continue to celebrate the strength of the human spirit and the power of kindness. Thank you for watching.